And you know, I've been telling you, Katie, that I know that you've got a lot to share and you should be speaking. So this is a
Yes.
step, right? This is a step.
Baby steps. Yeah.
And I think this is super valuable. I think people are seeing this and seeing the message come out of you, and they're like, it's resonating with them. Hey, Katie, thanks for jumping on with me. We are discussing this week's sermon. I'm so happy to have you here. Say hello.
Hi.
Hey, okay. You saw this week's message that went out on social media over the weekend. Tell me what impacted you the most watching that message.
So this week's message, we talked about Jesus when he was on the boat with his disciples, and when the boat started, the storm started coming and the boat started rocking. And you went over what Jesus did, but before that, the disciples' reaction to that.
Yeah.
And the thing that stuck out to me in that story is, in the past, when I've heard that story, I've been critical of the disciples. Like, come on, guys. Like, this is Jesus. You've seen him do a lot of stuff. Don't you think he can take care of this?
Yeah. Hey, we beat up on the disciples a lot, don't we?
We do. We call them the disciples. It's stupid.
The disciples. But listen, are we perfect? Like we screw up more than those guys did. Think about it. Like, these were 12 dudes hand selected by Jesus, and they followed him for 3 years. I think they're probably a little bit better in this whole journey than we ever dreamed or imagined, but we don't cut them any slack, right?
Right. No.
And they have nicknames like Doubting Thomas, like, come on. Is that really his legacy? I mean, seriously. All right, sorry. Keep going.
No, he picked some winners for sure, and we are critical of them. But in that story, I realized that I'm just like them all the time.
Yeah.
So many times I'm going through personal storms in my life, and I feel them. I feel like, God, like, don't you see that I'm struggling? Like, don't you know that the bills are coming? Don't you see that? Like, are you just gonna watch? Are you not gonna do anything about it? But what I'm reminded of in that story is that he's in the boat with me. He's not a bystander, watching me go through my struggles.
Yeah.
He's in the boat with me. He has the answer. And
Yeah.
It's not that I can't sense him because of the storm per se. It's that he's there, but he's not worried about it.
That's right.
He's ever present, and we forget that he's there with us because he's calm and we're freaking out. And I do that all the time. So, in the past, when I've heard that story, I'm critical. But now I'm like, no, Katie, you do this all the time. Every storm you've gone through, it's been like that.
And I have a lot of friends that are pastors, and, we try to be strong, right? And we want to be a good example, and we want to lead people well. But, sometimes I catch myself feeling like, I'm supposed to be better than this. I'm supposed to be stronger than this. I'm not supposed to let these things, create fear in me. And I'm supposed to be speaking to the storm. All those things are true. But sometimes we forget and we think that it's us speaking to the storm. Hey, the only one that could ever calm the wind and the waves is Jesus. So it has to be him speaking in us, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And so in that moment, we're sort of critical of the disciples for not standing up and speaking to the storm on their own, right?
Yes.
The only way they could do that is through him. And he was actually in the boat with him. So they did, they woke him up. Now I think it's a little comical to want to poke fun at the way they woke him up. They're like, don't you care that we're dying here? But, wouldn't you kind of be in that state of frantic as well? And
yes, absolutely.
In the message, we talk about two storms, right? The storm that's out there on the lake, right? The wind and the waves. And then Jesus dealt with that, and he dealt with the storm inside of them, right? Because there's a storm there, right?
Yes.
And that's absolutely the storm you're talking about that you face.
Yes, the internal storm for sure. And I feel like how you feel, where I'll go through things and I'm like, I should be better than this. Sometimes you even feel guilty for being caught in the storm too. And it's like, you have to admit that that's not you. Like, this is life and that happens. And I'm sure the disciples felt that way. Like, these guys a lot of them were fishermen. So they should have seen the signs of a storm coming, and they didn't. Right. And so that's with us at life. Storms come and we don't see them coming. And so, as faith-filled people, you almost feel like, well, maybe I'm doing something wrong, or maybe I'm not speaking the right things, or I'm not walking in faith. But the truth is, the storms are coming whether you're faith-filled or not. It's
Yeah.
just that you have to remind yourself that Jesus is in the boat with you and that he's there to calm the external storm and your internal storm as well.
Oh man, you know, Katie, that's so right, and that's the heart of the message: is He is in the boat with you, and he did assist the disciples with their faith. And sometimes we feel like when Jesus says, you know, ye of little faith, we feel like he's being critical of them. But if you read everything else that Jesus ever said, Jesus wasn't that kind of guy. You know, he wasn't like calling people out and making fun of them. Now, don't get me wrong, he called out some Pharisees, right? But that was him defending other people or pulling truth out. Um, you know, he would never judge you or diminish you for not having enough faith or strength. I believe Jesus is always coaching you and leading you. And don't get me wrong, he's more than a coach. He's our savior. He is life. He's not just some life coach. But I know that he's encouraging us, and you know, he's a shepherd, and the shepherd is going to nudge us when we need to be nudged. And so I think that this whole thing was a lesson for them. And it's a lesson for me when I look back and I read that story and I think about my own storms. If I just remember who's in the boat with me, then the peace will come here, and then the peace
Yes.
will happen here.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You know, I was talking to Misty about this, and it's funny. I don't know why I always thought this was like some little canoe they were in. I don't know if it was like some storybook picture or some Sunday
Probably.
school lesson. But this dude, there was 13 grown men, maybe more, in this boat. So it had to be a pretty large boat. But where do you think Jesus found a pillow? Do you think there must have been some sort of quarters on the boat where there was a cushion or pillows is normally there, right?
Right. I'm thinking like a bag of seed or something. I don't know why. That's what I always picture.
Yeah.
He had too many farm analogies to not be around seed at some point.
That's right. But you know, I don't know why, but some like 2,000 years later, in our minds of thinking about 2,000 ago, we think that they had nothing. Like, I mean, this could have been a nice boat. Like, there was probably nice boats back then, and I'm sure that maybe there was a bed in there. But either way, the point is that Jesus wasn't at all worried about the storm. But you know what I love about this story too is he was tired. He was tired from his work. You know, we know Jesus is perfect, but we think that for us to be perfect, you know, we can't be fearful, we can't be tired, we've got to always be happy, we've got to always be strong. You know what? We've seen times where Jesus was tired. He was tired. He was sleeping on a boat. He was tired. He'd worked all day.
Yeah.
We've seen times where Jesus has got really upset, really angry, right?
Yeah.
Throwing things. And you know, we don't think of Jesus like that. You know, there's times where he got really, really hungry, and there's times where Jesus was sad, you know?
Yeah, he cried.
And he was sad. He was upset. There's also a part of scripture where he's looking over Jerusalem and he's just sad. He's sad for what's happening and that people are not getting it and they're missing it, you know?
Yes, and that's a good point. And I think that a lot of times we get critical of ourselves, like we were talking about earlier, on how we behave, you know, through a storm or just through life in general. But we forget the fact that who's in our boat is someone who has gone through humanity, and he's gone through the emotions. And so he's not sitting there judging us on how we're reacting or anything like that. He's sitting there saying, I remember what that was like. I've been through this, and you're going to be okay.
Absolutely. That's exactly where I was going. So I thank you for saying that, because he wasn't upset. He doesn't get upset that we're afraid from time to time. That's why he came. You know, he gave us the way out. That's why he's in our boat. So Katie, you're exactly right. He is in the boat. And so when the storms come, we call on him, right? I would like for myself to have not gone, continue to go through all the emotions and the freak out that I typically do from time to time. I want to get right to Jesus. Like, hey, storm's coming. I know he's in my boat, and I know he's here with me. Yes. And that will calm the storm in me, regardless if there's calm externally, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you said, we beat ourselves up for, finding ourselves in storms. Like maybe if we were a better Christian, there wouldn't be a storm. That's just so untrue. I mean, Jesus was in a storm. I mean,
Right.
the storm, he was there too. And that's the thing, is we got to let ourselves off the hook, because we can't put ourselves on the cross, right?
Right.
I know we're supposed to pick up our cross. I don't want to like debate analytically here, but we can't put ourselves on the cross. You know, we put him on the cross. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah. So why do we have to be perfect? Um, we can be perfect through him. So let's just rest on him, right?
Yes, he's done all the work. So,
Right. Yeah. So hey, we voting. Listen, I really appreciate you coming on. Tell me, is there any final words or insight that you want to throw on here before we cut this thing?
well, something you said on Sunday is the quote that I really, really like, and I even wrote it down. So I'm going to read it. Is faith isn't peace from the storm. Faith is peace in the storm, which is a recap of everything that we've been talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So true. And not just because I said it, but it's true. It really, really is true.
Yes.
Absolutely. Hey, I want to see more of these weekly messages go out, obviously.
Me too. This is fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love coming on and talking about them. I'd like to get other people involved in the weekly itself. I know Kale's a great speaker. You're amazing husband, Red Reverend, we call him.
Reverend.
And you know, I've been telling you, Katie, that I know that you've got a lot to share and you should be speaking. So this is a step, right? A step.
Baby steps. Yeah.
Step here. And I think this is super valuable. I think people are seeing this and seeing the message come out of you, and they're like, it's resonating with them. So I think it's super valuable that you took the time out of your busy day. I know you've got kids. You probably locked them in the closet so you could have a moment of peace to jump on Zoom with me. But thank you for being a part of this, okay?
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Let's cut this short, okay?
All right.
All right, bye.